Aloha, Audleyites! I'm back with another video, and recently, I started doing these videos, but I realized I haven't ever explained who I am and why you should care about what I have to say about my gameplay breakdowns and anything I've said about competitive games. So I thought I'd make this vlog about who TiberiusAudley is, who I am. And I'm 28 years old. I've grown up and lived in Alabama my entire life. I was always the smart kid in class, the one that everyone would try to get to help with homework and stuff, the one that wouldn't pay any attention in class and still do really well on tests. But when I was at home, I wasn't doing homework or anything. I wasn't studying. I wasn't that kind of person. I was at home playing video games. That's basically all I did. Now, I did have a little bit of outdoor activities. I really liked baseball growing up, and I think that's where my competitive streak came in. I played baseball for 7 or 8 years. It was always rec league stuff, but I would make it on the all-star teams, despite being a very short person. If you haven't been able to tell from the camera, I'm actually 5'4". I'm only 100-something pounds. I never was a large person or ever had an athletic build, but I was actually good at sports, and it's because I would approach them in a smart way rather than a I'm really good at them kind of way. I would just learn what it took to make up for my inabilities to do things. And so that kind of ties into my gaming background and why I focused more on gaming growing up, because you don't actually have to have an athletic body for it. But back off that tangent. I've been playing video games since even before kindergarten. Started on the regular Nintendo. I'd play Mario games, Mario Kart. Really loved the battle mode in Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. The one where you shoot shells and try to pop the balloons. And we had a neighborhood arrangement where everybody would come over to either our house or one of the other person's houses, and we'd always just play battle mode in Mario Kart, or we'd race in this game called Uniracers. It was just a nice, fun way to relax with video games, and it was really enjoyable. I've had an NES, a Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, DS, SP, 3DS. Had a PlayStation and a PlayStation 2. I've never gotten a 3 or a 4 with that. I moved away from Sony when Xbox came out. I've had an Xbox, a 360, and an Xbox One. I've had a GameCube. I've had a Wii. I've got a Wii U now that I don't really use. I'd like to play it more, but I spend so much time with League of Legends and Halo that I don't really have time to, so it's really sad. And I got a PC able to really game on in 2007, though I did play some computer games before that. The first one that was really for gaming came in 2007. My favorite game of all time is a PlayStation RPG called Suikoden 2. Fantastic game, great story, ton of characters, great battle system. Second favorite, really close behind, is called Der Langrisser. It's one of those tactical RPGs from Super Nintendo days. It was really great. I've spent the most time in League of Legends, Diablo 2, and the Halo series as a whole. Diablo 2, I always had a ton of fun trying to theorycraft builds and then playing until I got the items to make those builds work. I had a tank sorceress, a barbarian that could transform into a werebear and a werewolf. I really liked theorycrafting and stuff. And my love of Diablo 2 is what actually got me more involved in online communities in gaming. And the first community I ever got super involved in was the pre-release community for a game called Hellgate London. And you may not have ever heard of Hellgate London, and that's because the game ended up bombing, but it was from the people who made Diablo 2. Not Blizzard. Blizzard ended up making Diablo 3. But the company that made Diablo and Diablo 2 is actually called Blizzard North. It was a separate studio entirely, and they were actually in North California, up towards San Francisco area. And after Diablo 2, there's a big problem with Blizzard's publishers, where things weren't going the way they wanted. And so these guys, they left Blizzard and were like, we're going to go make our own game because we're tired of waiting around. And so they started making this game, and they pitched it as Half-Life meets Diablo. So it was a first-person shooter Diablo game. And it was supposed to be set in London, and all these demons are coming up from the earth and everything. and you play as different classes. But it was basically a Diablo game that was also a first-person shooter, which was really cool, and I was really excited about the game. So I got really involved in fan site communities where I would help try to compile all the information. I would be one of the first ones to, when a new article came out, I would be posting that on the forums. I was writing fan fiction for the game that wasn't even out yet. I was that guy. But I got really involved. I was on a podcast with that. I ended up being one of their site directors after some of the others actually got hired by Flagship Studios and moved up in the community. I got kind of left in the dust in that regard. But I would arrange like chats with the IRC like dev chats where the developers would come in and people would have an automated system to help submit their questions and the devs would answer. It was just a great way of just making sure everyone felt valued in the community, and it was really fun to be a part of that community. I was just sad that Hellgate London ended up bombing because it wasn't a polished game at release. There were so many bugs. There were actually quests in the game where it would make it so you couldn't beat the game anymore. It got patched out eventually, but the game's launch was such a mess that it didn't sell enough, and they just couldn't make enough money to pay off their venture capital and their debts, and they ended up having to sell the game to Korea. And after that happened, I'd actually gotten, during that time, I'd actually gotten a job specifically so I could save up to get a computer for Hellgate London. So I had all this money coming in at that point. I was being a productive member of society, working a job, and then I had money to get a 360, and I was like, well, this Halo 3 game just came out, and I had played Halo and Halo 2 back in my high school days. Like, I played Combat Evolved going over to a friend's house. We would have 6 people, and it would be bottom 2 switch out. Typical Halo old days fashion. Never competed in any tournaments in Halo CE. Didn't take it too seriously. The game had a very high skill cap, and I'm not exactly good at games, I just understand them. So I didn't do too well in CE. Halo 2 came out. I didn't have an Xbox at the time, because the Xbox I had, the power cord caused the system to short out, so I couldn't actually use it at all. And so I was playing Halo 2 on a friend's Xbox that he lent me, because he had gotten a computer and been playing all sorts of other games. He's like, okay, you can just borrow my Xbox and play on my account. So I played Halo 2 entirely on my friend's account, borrowing his console for months at a time. I was really focused on big team battle in that. I didn't get as excited about 4v4 game modes. I liked vehicles and all that stuff. So I was the casual player. But at the same time, I had that competitive streak. And that really got to come out more in Halo 3 when I found this community called Halo 3 Wheelmen. They were entirely focused on driving the Warthog. But at the same time, like, they would play in a party of 8. So if you weren't the one getting to drive or gun the Warthog, you had to help that Warthog succeed. And it was sort of like a competitive team, but at the same time it was a loose fit community. So it was a kind of gradual easing in from casual to competitive for me. And around, like, not long after I joined them, they got invited to this tournament called the Featherless Fellows Tournament. And at the time, I was a 43 as my highest rank, because I played in red bar lag anytime I played ranked. It didn't go well at all. I would lag out of games suddenly and just automatically lose because of it. Or I would be running into a wall, or see everyone else in the game running into a wall, and I was running around fine, but nothing I did mattered in the game because I was actually desynced from the game. So I didn't play a lot of ranked. I stuck to social, partially because of that reason. And so when they got invited to this Featherless Fellows tournament, it was for anyone that wasn't a Brigadier or better yet. And I was a 43, so I got to compete in this tournament. Our team dominated the tournament. We had, out of that group, the best foot soldiers and vehicle users and just general Halo knowledge in the game at the time for people that weren't 45s, which anyone that was relevant was a 45 at that point, so it wasn't like we didn't belong in that tournament. And right after I ended up getting my 45s, so it was almost deceptive for getting that. But that was my first competitive Halo experience, and I loved it. And shortly after, Big Team Battle started having tournaments and ladders and all sorts of stuff with the BigTeamBattle.net community, which I helped out a lot in. I left Halo 3 Wheelman to join this other team called Master Theory, and I went hardcore in Master Theory, helping my team out. I was pulling up spreadsheets and not spreadsheets. I was pulling up the heat maps in Halo 3 that Bungie's stat system had, where it would show where people died with what weapon or where they got kills with what weapon and all of that sort of stuff. And I would actually break down a player's obvious mistakes and playstyle problems and what they would need to improve on just by looking at a heat map of their gameplay. That's how hardcore serious I got into Big Team Battle in Halo. And I really wish we still had heat maps so I could do the same kind of thing with Halo 5. It's not the case. It's unfortunate. But that's how serious I got it. And it was around 2008 I started watching MLG Halo. It was the very end of the year when Instinct was with Walshy and Soviet with Roy and Lunchbox. I fell in love with competitive 4v4s instantly after that. Started watching every MLG tournament there was. And the moment I found out there were like testing lobbies for the settings, I jumped in on that. I wanted to be as involved as I could. I got super involved in the forums. I was a forum warrior, typing up big forum posts predicting how each roster would end up doing. And around Halo Reach, I was still doing the test settings with KC, and during that time, there's a big kind of backlash out of the Forge community. They're like, our maps never get picked, and they were like, oh, these maps never get tested. So I made sure that I did my part to make sure the maps got tested, and I held my own testing lobbies, because KC and Anakin at the time had a rule where if you wanted to submit feedback regarding the competitive settings, you had to be able to link game links to show you had played on them. So I held my own testing lobbies at the time, did everything I could to get any community involvement. It wasn't as great as it could have been. Like, a lot of people that complained didn't put any effort into playing, and so they were kind of barking at the wall, like, you had your chance, do your work. And after that, like, when Nexus King of the Hill got added back into the rotation, I was still a big fan of Walshy at the time, because he was my style of player, where he's more focused on outsmarting the opponents, whereas he wasn't great mechanically skilled anymore at that point. He had started to decline. Part of that lack of practice, part of it just getting the age coming in. And since that was my style of play, I was a big fan of Walshy. Lunchbox was still my favorite, but Walshy was my number 2. And I was watching him scrim with Ninja, because Ninja had just blown up as a streamer, and it was Ninja, Mikwin, Walshy, and Nated playing on the Nexus King of the Hill game type. And I noticed they kept complaining about the spawns, and so I sent Walshy a message saying, hey, this is how the spawns work. If you just stand next to it, you'll spawn your teammate there, as long as there's not death influence around you. And after that, they asked me to coach Turning Point. I was like, really? That would be awesome. That sounds cool. I want to coach. I hadn't actually really knew what coaches were. I knew I wanted to do it at the time. I didn't know exactly what was involved. So I got to coach Turning Point. I went to a Red Bull LAN all the way at Red Bull headquarters. That was amazing. Red Bull event was probably the best esports event I've been to. I've been to quite a lot now. I only coached Turning Point at Orlando after the Red Bull LAN, because after Orlando, MLG had picked up League of Legends, and while all of this Halo stuff was going on, I'd gotten kind of addicted to League of Legends as well. Like, I'd started playing it in beta. At the end of beta, I was a top 500 player. I was the first player in League of Legends ever to use cloth armor to jungle, which opened up a wide range of champions that could be jungling, because before, everyone thought Warwick was the only champion that could jungle because he could jungle with a vampiric scepter. And then I just pointed out to people, hey, use a cloth armor and 5 potions, and it's so much easier, because you just build into Madred's Razor and so on and so forth. If you're a Halo person, this is probably going way over your head right now, unless you also play League of Legends, in which case you can maybe appreciate it a little bit. Things have changed a ton since then. They've redesigned the game basically every year it's been out. And I was also the first person to ever use Nunu as a support champion. It got used a year and a half after I brought it out in an in-house league. That was the first time it saw professional play, but it was like I had been doing it a long-ass time before that. So I was constantly the kind of player who was trying to figure out, how can I make this work when I was looking at League of Legends, and like, why do people think this doesn't work? And I would look to figure out if it could work. And again, it was back into my Diablo 2 kind of unique theory crafting stuff. I was doing that with League of Legends with champions to try to figure out how to make them work better, how to stop other things from being as perceived overpowered as they were. And that was just the kind of player I was. And so that transitioned back into Halo as I was coaching Turning Point, and MLG announced they were going to be hosting League of Legends tournaments, and I had been messaging Killa KC because I had been working with him, hey, do you know if MLG has any jobs where I could work on League of Legends? And so I got hired to cover the events for MLG as a writer and social media reporter at the time. So I was the guy tweeting from MLG LOL scores at the time, just keeping people up to date on what was happening with League of Legends and writing articles and interviews. They only did that for one event. The articles and stuff, they only did that for one event because their editorial staff got axed right after I got brought on, which was really sad. It's kind of the story of my esports life as well. But then they didn't have League of Legends at the next event, so I coached Gimme My Money. We got top 24. That was the last Halo Reach event. And I worked for the next 3 events for MLG, and then for another year covering League of Legends at events. And Halo 4 came out. Excuse me. And I didn't buy Halo 4 at launch. I was not excited about the game at all. I was actually really upset by some of the decisions in the game, and because of how Halo Reach had left a bitter taste in my mouth, I was like, I'm not going to get Halo 4. I got talked into getting Halo 4. Teammate from Master Theory, the big team battle team I was talking about, talked me into it and was like, hey, this game really is good. I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I got it. I didn't like it. Halo 4 was not a game I enjoyed, but at the time, there was a lot of people talking about how bad the spawns were in the map, so I was like, I'm going to try to reverse engineer the spawn system. So I got in Forge, and I'd spent days trying to figure out exactly what amount the influence for spawns was. And I got it pretty close. Some of the things I found weren't accurate because I had only been testing on one map, and the size of the things were different on different maps. And there's one assumption I had made that was incorrect that messed up some of the other things I had posted. But because of my work with the spawn system, Ghostiyame came up to me when he was making the team throwdown settings. If you were active in Halo 4, you can remember Ghost working on the settings. And he asked me to help him try to make the spawns better. We tried. Probably didn't take the best approach. I think Curtis from New Zealand or Australia, he ended up coming in and doing a little bit better work after I said I don't want to do this anymore. But Ghostiyame and I would be up till 3 in the morning just getting spawn points and spawn zones and everything placed exactly the way we wanted to. I never got direct feedback on how to, like, what was wrong with them after that. I just got messages saying, hey, these spawns suck, fix them. And if you're trying to get spawns fixed and someone is actually doing the work, tell them what is wrong with the spawns, not, hey, fix them. Be like, hey, I'm spawning here too much. So they can be like, okay, I'm going to make you not spawn there as much. And a little bit salty about that, because like people look at the spawn and they're like, you didn't fix anything. And I was like, I didn't get any feedback on what needed fixing. Okay, thanks. Salt gone there. I also talked Ghost into including the concussion rifle, so if the concussion rifle in a 1v1 happened to have cost you $200,000, you have me to blame. Sorry, Pistola. After Halo 4, I was doing a little bit of schmoozing while Halo 4 Global Championships were going on. I talked to Puckett. He had mentioned there was an esports thing going on, or coming soon. He wanted to have the ESPN of esports, or the Sports Center of Esports. So he hosted, or started creating this show called Esports Report while he was vice president of broadcasting or something, or executive producer at MLG. I'm not sure exactly what his title was. But he started doing Esports Report, and I was one of the 2 writers for the show when it first launched, and it was a weekly show before they changed it to being a daily Call of Duty show. It was me and this one other guy doing all the writing. We would watch hours and hours of esports VODs every weekend, find relevant clips for highlights, and just write summaries of the major tournaments for the weekend. So that was me. If you liked that show, that's who I am, or that's what I did. After Esports Report crashed, tried to still do more relevant stuff in League of Legends. Around Season 3 or 4, they added trinkets in League of Legends for Vision. So I actually went through and tracked exactly when players would swap out their yellow trinkets for red and blue trinkets, and I kept a spreadsheet of that. And I noticed the teams that were doing the best would swap them as soon as that possible, and it would be 3 or 4 players swapping it every time. And I made a post on Reddit about that got to the front page of Reddit, and right after that, some of the things that I had observed in it started happening across the scene. And I had also made one prediction from watching that where I had said, I think this should happen. It hadn't happened from any of the players at the time. I said, I think AD carries should swap out their yellow trinket for blue trinket around level 9, because they don't really need the ward, and the blue trinket has more range, so it's safer. And literally the next week of LCS, 2 players did exactly what I had said in my Reddit thread. And after that, it slowly but surely caught on in the entire scene until every player at Worlds did it. And it literally started the week after I made a post on Reddit about it, so I'd like to take credit for that. I never actually became relevant in League of Legends, never got hired for anything in League of Legends outside of covering it for MLG. And MLG kind of spoiled me because they pay really well. MLG are probably the best company to work for as far as pay has gone for me. I really appreciate them. They're cool. Other than that, the only thing I've done is coached in Halo 2 Anniversary. I coached Elevate. After that, I kind of went back toward League of Legends a bit, but I would follow Halo a little bit. And when Halo 5 was about to come out, I got approached by Miquin to be analyst for Team Liquid. I was like, okay. Like, it's going to be paid. I was like, sweet, let's do it. And so I focused on Halo 5. Miquin ditched the team as soon as I joined, and the rest has been pretty much history. Like, I started making my videos not long after Halo 5 came out, so that's been about it. That's why I do the stuff I do. That's why I feel like my insight is relevant, because usually you'll find I'm actually right, eventually. If I'm not right, I probably just didn't have enough information. I'm never wrong. Wink, wink. But that's who I am. Hopefully this gives you guys some more insight into who I am. Maybe you like me better more. Maybe you think I'm a pompous asshole. I am. No, it's actually a little bit of a caricature. I'm not actually as smug or arrogant as I seem to be. If you talk to me with like mano a mano kind of thing, I'm usually a little bit more level-headed, but I am a straight shooter. I always try to be two things, honest and fair, and so I usually tend to weigh in on things whether people want to hear or not, and that's probably why I come across as smug and pompous. But other than that, that's who I am. Hopefully this video's enlightened you a little bit, made you feel more like, okay, maybe this guy does know a little bit about what he's talking about. Maybe I can watch his next video. And that's going to be all for this video. Tune in next time, whenever that ends up being. Who knows? Maybe I'll put out an Audley Analyzes again very soon. But that's going to be it. See you guys. Peace. Aloha. Aloha.